I think it's an uphill battle looking at their roster. I think you'd say they probably have the worst roster.
Are we entering a complete rebuild here in Seattle?
No question.
The Seahawks look primed for a dismal season and a lengthy rebuild after trading away their franchise quarterback and the inventor of the Danger Witch, Russell Wilson. Instead, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, and an amazing crop of rookies guided them to a surprising 9-8 record. Welcome to Shut Off Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. That's Kevin. Today, we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to break down this Seahawks roster by position from starter to bench for every fantasy football format, from casual redrafter to the dynasty obsessed. Don't worry, Mama Bird's got you covered. Wait, am I Mama Bird? We didn't talk about this. We're also going to answer 3 big questions. Was Geno Smith a fluke last year? Who is the wide receiver to own this year? And did they make a mistake by drafting Zach Charbonnet? Plus, we'll make a big fat guess about their season. Like a blind man in an orgy, I'm likely to get at least a few right. This is the Seattle Seahawks. I've never been to Seattle. It's nice? Huh. Do they give tours of the Starbucks factory? I'd love to see how they burn the beans to make them taste like oil and hair. And now it's time for a breakdown. When it comes to the coaches, there were 3 notable changes. First, they lost Sean Desai. He was their associate defensive head coach, which sounds like a made-up role you give to friends, like associate producer. Desai left to be the Eagles' new defensive coordinator. They also lost quarterbacks coach Dave C. Anels. Sounds French. He's now with the Buccaneers as their offensive coordinator. Jesus, that dude is ripped. You could stack books on those abs. Their new quarterbacks coach is Greg Olson. Not that one. Yeah, that one. Their offensive losses look more like a menu for their upcoming draft. Rashad Penny and Travis Homer, Cody Barton, Marquise Goodwin, even their defensive line losses look very calculated. Because in free agency they brought in linemen Dre'mont Jones and Jaron Reed. Bobby Wagner is back, and they got Devin Bush for depth. In the draft, they had 10 picks, 4 in the first 2 rounds, and those first 4 looked bulletproof. They replaced Homer and Penny with Charbonnet and McIntosh. Marquise Goodwin is gone? No problem. We'll just draft Jackson Smith-Njigba. Linebacker, safety, corner, edge, the entire thing looked well orchestrated and well executed. If this year's draft class comes close to contributing as much as last year's, GM John Schneider should get an award. Or a gift card to Merv's. Something. Geno Smith cracked the top 10 for fantasy last year. He turned out to be exactly what the Seahawks needed. He threw for over 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, and won Comeback Player of the Year. And he wasn't dinking and dunking. Next Gen Stats ranked the top 10 deep passers from last season. Jalen Hurts was 3rd, Tua Tagovailoa was 2nd, and guess who was 1st? He's got a long, illustrious career ahead of him. What's that? He's 32? Grab the shovels, boys! This man is dead! You can't deny what Geno Smith did last year, or the way in which he did it. The only legit question is, was last year a fluke? And to that, I say this. Geno Smith was drafted in 2013 by the Jets, and this was the reaction.
Is this really the place I want to go? Because the coaching situation is not, by any stretch of the imagination, solidified. They haven't done anything to help their offense at all. The right guard, right tackle position is a mess right now.
You look at Geno Smith, you're saying going to the New York Jets, I hope he doesn't have to play right away.
The coach they were talking about was Rex Ryan, not known to be a quarterback whisperer, or to be a whisperer, period.
Do we understand what the I want to see tomorrow? Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Then they went to shit on the offensive line, which was not so good. Geno got the start as a rookie in a shit show after butt-fumbling Mark Sanchez was injured, and somehow eked out 3,000 yards despite his top receivers being Jeremy Curley and David Nelson. Who is that? He struggled in his 2nd year and was even benched briefly. Prior to his 3rd season, a teammate fractured his jaw over a $600 debt. Thanks, guy. He was ruled out for 6 to 10 weeks, and Ryan Fitzpatrick took over, and that was it for Geno. He never got a starting gig again until Seattle. In between, he was a backup for the Giants and the Chargers. Smith had 2 years in the Jets' dysfunction, and then...
They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though.
Were we wrong about Geno Smith? Was he secretly always this good and he just never got a chance? I don't think so. He was a good prospect who went to a bad situation and didn't get the development he needed. I think Geno Smith is finally in the right environment with the right coaches and a talented team around him to succeed. Give Geno Smith credit for his perseverance. Give Coach Carroll and his staff credit. This is by far the best group of receivers that Geno Smith has ever had. Seattle actually has an offensive line good enough and a run game to complement him. Last year was no fluke. Drew Lock is the backup. He came over as part of the Russell Wilson trade. He was even floated as the possible starter last year. There's a very familiar feeling to Lock. He was a second-round pick too, like Geno, and he didn't get a whole lot of runway as a starter either. But he had moments, like in 2020 in his game against the Panthers where he threw for 4 touchdowns, not to be confused with his game against the Raiders that year, where he threw for 4 interceptions. Could Lock benefit from the same environment and become a starter here in time? He's only 25 years old. It's possible. But so far, there are no signs to indicate this. Everything with the Seahawks feels very planned, and currently, Lock is only signed to a 1-year, $4 million deal. That's not an investment. If Lock isn't with the Seahawks moving forward, my faith in a potential rise blows away like a fart in the wind. Holton Ahlers is an undrafted free agent out of East Carolina. Maybe he makes the practice squad. I'll take Geno Smith in redraft, dynasty, and best ball. His age is a concern in dynasty, but I don't think we're there yet. I think he's got another 2 years at least. Enough time to ride him as a starter and find somebody else to replace him. I would hold Lock in dynasty, but I'm not buying. I want to see what happens next offseason. If the Seahawks give him a longer contract, I'd feel better about his upside. If they let him walk, I'm out. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, like the video, and click the bell. You know how this works. All the stuff all the other YouTubers say, blah, 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 blah. YouTube makes us say this. They physically make us. There is a giant man from YouTube right over there, and he's pounding his fist against his other hand and looking at my subscriber count. Have mercy on me. I'm fat. Kenneth Walker III got off to a slow start last year and missed a game late due to an ankle injury, but still finished with over 1,000 yards. I expect similar numbers this year, if not slightly better. He only caught 27 passes. That's not a big part of his game. Some expect the passing work could go to rookie Zach Charbonnet, but if they don't up the volume passing to the running back in general, that doesn't really mean much. It's not like running backs outside of Kenneth Walker caught much of anything last year either. Zach Charbonnet was a second-round draft pick. Surprise! Seahawks fans loved it. The fantasy community, not so much, because we like clarity, and this was anything but. Charbonnet was generally considered to be the 3rd best running back in the draft. Now he's sharing a backfield with Kenneth Walker.
I like the player a lot, but the Seahawks?
Last year, the Seahawks ran about 42.6% of the time versus the pass. That's 20th in the league. Pete Carroll loves to run the ball. In his 14 seasons as the head coach of the Seahawks, his rushing percentage has often been in the top half of the league, including 3 years where it was 1st overall. Sure, the league has changed over time. It's a passing league now. But I think Pete Carroll wants to run more, and adding Zach Charbonnet to Kenneth Walker only confirms it. Pete will not be denied that rushing game if Walker gets injured. Run, Pete, run! But what can we expect from Charbonnet without a Walker injury? If he averages somewhere between 10 and 12 carries a game and plays a full season, he could see somewhere between 600 and 700 yards, putting him about RB33 and making him more of a bye-week filler in redraft. Like I said, some think Charbonnet is going to get some passing work. Last year, at UCLA, he had 37 receptions in 10 games for 321 yards. So yeah, the blueprint is there. 10 to 12 carries, 4 receptions a game, and the occasional touchdown would definitely make for some standalone value. Running back, and man who just realized he left the oven on, DJ Dallas. Your time is up. Drafted in 2020, this is the final year of Dallas's rookie contract. In 3 seasons, he's only had 102 rushing attempts for 432 yards. I'd be surprised if they re-signed him. And even if they do, does it matter? Kenny McIntosh was a 7th round pick this year. The only real production he had came in his last year at Georgia. just over 800 yards on 150 attempts, but he tested poorly at the combine. Still, he has shown receiving skills. Last year, he had 43 receptions for 504 yards. It might be enough to help him cling to the roster. I'll take Kenneth Walker III in all formats. I ain't afraid of no Zach Charbonnet. If the manager in your league is skittish about a workload reduction, work a trade. I'll take Zach Charbonnet in redraft and dynasty. In best ball, his ADP is near 100. I've done a lot of best ball drafts this year and haven't taken Charbonnet once. Geno Smith is just a few spots lower, and I think Geno will mean more to his position than Charbonnet will to his for that format. I can't find the value in DJ Dallas anywhere. Even if he moves on next year, I doubt he finds a boost in value. I'll take a chance on Kenny McIntosh in deep dynasty. I don't see any wiggle room running behind Walker or Charbonnet, but maybe there's a pass-catching role for him next year after Dallas leaves. A lot can change when a new QB comes to town. DK Metcalf had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. But let's go deeper. How was his connection with Geno Smith? Well, his targets went up, receptions per game up, touchdowns went down, and average per game was the lowest of his career. He finished just inside the top 20 for the position. That is to say, he was good, but not great. Tyler Lockett also had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Oddly enough, his stats have looked nearly the same over the last 4 years. Doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. He was the receiver to own in Seattle, but the delta between him and Metcalf really just came down to a wee couple of touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba was drafted 20th overall. His best college production came in 2021, when he had 95 receptions for 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns. His final year at Ohio went to poop after he suffered an injury. He barely played. His testing metrics don't pop, at least not his long speed. But his burst and agility is where his bread gets buttered. It's what helps him create separation on his routes, and he runs some crispy routes. Steve Smith called him special and compared him to Julian Edelman. The question for JSN is, what can you expect from him as a rookie? Can he make hay with both Metcalf and Lockett still in prime roles? He's a slot receiver. I think he's going to soak up a lot of intermediate and underneath work, which in turn could lead to a lot of volume. I'm not basing that on a previous role on this offense. Instead, I'm basing it on the absence of one. Geno can run, but he's not a mobile quarterback in the sense that he'll take off and run instead of throw short, like a Lamar Jackson. And their tight end usage is kind of all over the place. So I think JSN could be that mid-level outlet that's been missing for Geno, one that can turn short work into long gains. The next level of receivers are D. Eskridge, Cody Thompson, and Derek Young. Eskridge was a second-round pick, and so far, it's been a disappointment. He's failed to see much of the field, partially due to injury, but reports are that he's come to camp rejuvenated. He's even reading the playbook. Nice. He's a reader. Wait, what was he reading before? Call me skeptical, but all the Eskridge hype has been coming in June, aka the lying season, when teams hype players they hope to trade away. The rest of the receivers are Matt Landers, Aesop Winston Jr., Cade Johnson, Jake Bobo, John Hall, and Tyjon Lindsley. Matt Landers was an undrafted free agent from this year. He has good metrics. Last year, he had 900 yards and 8 touchdowns for Arkansas. I'll take Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN in all formats. It sounds like a gut take. Can all 3 receivers have that much upside in one offense? They can if Geno Smith throws for another 4,000 yards again this season. I'm not fading any of these guys with a healthy Geno under center. Tyler Lockett's dynasty outlook has question marks with him being 31 years old and a dynamic rookie possibly impacting his targets. The sell window is open, but there's no panic. Look for the right price and be patient. A contending team might come knocking mid-season. We asked the question off the top, what if you could only take one of these top 3 receivers for this season? I think when it comes to yardage, it's gonna be Lockett, then Metcalf, and then JSN. But I think they're gonna be close. The difference for most valuable from a fantasy football perspective is who do you think will get more touchdowns? I can make the case for Metcalf's speed down the field or his size in the red zone. I could point to the volume I expect JSN to get. But the answer is Tyler Lockett, the man who averages 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns a season. Currently, Lockett's ADP is just ahead of JSN's and about 30 spots behind DK Metcalf. Even from a value standpoint, it's winner, winner, chicken dinner. Noah Fant came over as part of the Russell Wilson trade. He was a first-round pick by the Broncos. He's got a ton of athleticism, and he's still young. I expected a lot. Instead, he didn't reach 500 yards despite playing in all 17 games. He didn't seem to be a big part of the game plan. Just look at his targets over the year compared to the rest of the league. I believe he's got the talent to be a top 5 guy, but he's not going to do it if you don't give him the ball. Are the Seahawks going to change their game plan and get him more involved this year? I wouldn't bank on it. Not with JSN in-house to take away some of the intermediate work. Plus, another reason for the Fant depression was all the other tight ends. Noah Fant finished barely just inside the top 20 for the position, even with sad numbers. Will Dissly finished only a few spots below him. He had 34 receptions for 349 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not enough to invest in him for fantasy, just enough to make Fant managers cry. Just imagine if the 38 targets Will Dissly got went to Noah Fant. 38 plus 63 equals... I know that's not how this works. Colby Parkinson also got 34 targets. Should I go back to the target graphic? I'll do it. Parkinson had 25 receptions for 322 yards and 2 touchdowns. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? The Seahawks love tight ends, and they hate fantasy football. Why you gotta do us like that, Pete? I have no confidence in this tight end room. Not for fantasy, but based solely on the actual talent I believe these guys have, I'll take Fant in Dynasty and Best Ball. You cannot convince me of Will Dissly. I'll take Colby Parkinson in Deep Dynasty because I think he's decent and he's young. He could replace Dissly tomorrow and probably nobody would notice. I mean, maybe Mrs. Dissly. As I said, I expect this team to run more. They're distributing to all the tight ends, meaning even the top man here is getting a slice of a smaller slice of this pie. Welcome to the Seahawks, Dre'mont Jones. Last season, he finished just inside the top 20 for the position with the Broncos. He should be able to find the same success in this defense along Jarran Reed, who's also new to the team. Derek Hall is a second-round pick out of Auburn. He's probably not going to crack the starting lineup this year, as the Hawks have good linebackers in place, but he is a scary athlete, one that I would recommend investing in for Dynasty IDP formats. I did. Uchenna Nwosu was a top 10 linebacker last season. He had 42 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and forced 3 fumbles. He's a core piece to this defense, and he's only 26 years old. Jordan Brooks was also a top 10 linebacker last year. The former first-round pick had 103 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. He suffered a torn ACL in Week 17, but there's optimism he'll be ready for the start of this season. Cornerback Tariq Woolen was a 5th-round pick last year, despite great size and elite speed. How did he fall so low? People are stupid. His rookie season consisted of 46 tackles and 6 interceptions. Could he take another step forward this season? If he does, he'll get there quickly with that speed. Stop naming your children Michael Jackson. He was a top 15 cornerback in fantasy last year, but it didn't stop the Seahawks from drafting Devin Witherspoon to replace him. Witherspoon went 5th overall. He should be the missing piece to a very young secondary. The Seahawks' strength of schedule is listed as the 12th hardest. So let's take a look. I think they can go undefeated into the bye. I'll take Cincy for a loss in Week 6, back-to-back wins over the Cardinals and Browns, a loss to the Ravens in Week 9, then 3 wins over the Commanders, Rams, and Niners, followed by 3 straight losses to the Cowboys, Niners, and Eagles, a bounce-back win over the Titans in Week 16, and then split the Steelers and the Cards, giving them a record of 11-6. Pretty good. They could even win the division. The Vegas money says the Niners, which I don't disagree with, but I find it fascinating. They're the only team in the league where the quarterback doesn't matter. Yeah, that's why they traded up for Trey Lance. Thanks for watching Shut Up Football. Let me know what team you think I should do next. There's a link in the description if you want to join the Discord. That's a thing that people can do. Leave your comments below, like, subscribe, say hi to your mom for me, and we'll catch you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.
That was 10 times harder than it needed to be. All because of my writing. Good thing I'm not a writer. I think this is going well. No one's died yet. Oh, and Kevin's dead. Run, Pete, run!